Ashley, welcome to the Art Coaching Club podcast. Just to kick things off, can you introduce yourself and give a little bit of context into you and the work you're creating?
Yeah, my name is Ashley Blazer. I am an artist working in Charlottesville, Virginia now. I actually recently relocated from Austin, Texas, where I spent the past 5 or so years. Came back east to kind of get closer to family and slow down a little bit, and it's great to be here. Also, always missing Austin a little bit. All of my work is centered on the natural world and what it represents for me in terms of a vessel of truth, like a spiritual realm, even. That's very generally speaking what I'm thinking about when I'm making my work. And then a little more specifically, humans' role within that context, which obviously can be a bit of a paradox. So that's what I'm thinking about. I have been really experimental in the past couple of years. I've been trying out working with textiles, incorporating textiles into some of my paintings. And I've even ventured into the sculpture space a little bit. So I kind of am like teetering in this space between the second and third dimension a little bit in my work, which has been fun. And interestingly, I've found recently I've sort of been feeling a pull back towards like more traditional painting, just working with paint on canvas. I feel like I've learned so much from that process of experimentation, and it's really kind of changed the way that I think about painting. So yeah, that's where I am.
I think it's really interesting because I don't talk to as many artists that switch medium to medium. Maybe they'll switch subject to subject, but I feel like your through line is more what you're the subject and like I guess the theme, I would say, of what you're focusing on, but you're kind of switching mediums. I think it's interesting you've like almost come full circle back to painting, but can you kind of take us back and explain, how did you come into art in the first place? Like where did this love to create come from, this expression? Like what kind of is your background there?
Yeah, so and this might explain a little bit the kind of like interest in various types of media. So I'm actually, I guess technically a kind of an art school dropout. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design freshman year, and I ended up transferring out. I finished my BA at Sewanee in Tennessee, and at the time I was in a previous life, I had kind of a career in like the development space in East Africa.
Mhm.
And so I left SCAD at the time. I was wanting to be able to study things in addition to art. And I think I was kind of yearning like a more traditional liberal arts college experience. And SCAD was very much art school as it should be. So I left, but I think so now that I've returned to making art later, and just to like the little story there, I was living in New York with my husband. We'd moved up there for a job that he took in, I think this was like 2018. I was working in the nonprofit world. I was just kind of like at this stalemate in my career, feeling like unfulfilled and not into what I was doing. And so ended up actually in not a great work environment. Decided to quit. Life's too short. And then while I was at home sort of trying to figure out what was next, I was like, oh, well, I picked up a paintbrush for the first time in a while. Very quickly realized that that is actually what I'm supposed to be doing with my time. And so,
Yeah.
fast forward, that was like 8 years ago or so, and I've been working professionally as an artist ever since. A lot of that time I've spent experimenting with media. I think having that first year at SCAD, in your first year of art school, you take a bunch of foundational courses that you kind of get exposure to all these different types of media. And I think there was kind of like a lingering curiosity
Hmm.
there. And I wanted to see what else was possible and see what else I was capable of. And so I've been all over the place. And I like to think of artist style as something that's kind of like an organic, ongoing, evolving thing rather than like an arrival at a place. And so I don't know, who knows where I'll go in the future, but this is where I am now. And it's, like I said, the work in other media has actually been really useful to me in my painting. And so, yeah, that's kind of my art background in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I talk to a lot of artists, both with an art background in college or not, and then some that don't have that. And I do feel like if you touch the art education space, whether you do it for a year or you do it, I went to a liberal arts school, but majored in artwork, you are a lot more, I would say, like free with the idea of finding your style. Like you understand it's evolving, like a revolving door. It's not something where you like land and stay. Whereas I think a lot of artists who come to art later in life or, just through a different path feel like it's something they have to solve and
Right.
they have to land there. And it's just an interesting conversation. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it is kind of it's a freeing concept to say this is something that I'm pursuing now, but as artists we're creative and we don't have to stay in that spot.
Totally. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I certainly have spent a lot of time banging my head against the wall trying to figure out what is my voice. It's unfortunately, I think that's not really something that can be rushed. It's very much like a process that you kind of have to, it's a journey. I have a better understanding of what I'm making and what I'm trying to say now than I did 8 years ago, but I'm always kind of moving forward and evolving.
Well, how has moving played kind of shaped what you're working on and played a role in this? Because I feel like, I mean, I went to school in Lexington, Virginia, and then I had some friends in Austin. My sister's now in Dallas. So I've spent, I know the different terrains, very
Totally.
different and very different culturally and all of that. How has that affected your work in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. When I moved to Austin, I think I found my work really being heavily influenced by the landscape and the flora and fauna in that
Mhm.
area, partially because it was totally new to me. It's different from what you grow up around. Like you're seeing the same kind of natural scenery around you. And then all of a sudden, I'm in this new environment where there's like cactus and like armadillos, and it's so cool and feels exotic. And so I think we also moved to Austin during COVID. And so I was kind of stuck at home and like there was only so much that I could look at because I was, and so we lived in this cool house that literally armadillos like roamed around in, and we had like owls that would come visit us in the live oak trees. And so all of that was just really where my attention was when I got to Austin. And so that's had a heavy influence on my work. I also spent some time in New Mexico when I was living there, which has been a major through line for me too. But I think now that I'm back home, it's like that way of thinking has clicked on for me. And so now, having left the landscape that I grew up in, coming back to it, and not just landscape, natural world, everything around me, now I'm kind of finding that I'm seeing it with fresh eyes in a way because I kind of learned how to observe better when I was in Austin, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I've only been here a couple of months, but already I'm feeling things kind of shift. So.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Has it been hard to shift like studio space, or I don't know how you were set up? Obviously, I'm New York to Austin to Charlottesville, I'm sure all pretty different, but has it been hard or influenced your work in terms of just like the studio setup you have, like spatially or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I always find that the space that I'm working in really has a strong impact on my practice, and that's been no different since I've moved here. It's been kind of funny, like, there's always trade-offs. My last studio in Austin was a 3-minute drive from my house, which was amazing. I've got two little kids, and so the convenience of that is was just like, I had I couldn't trade it.
Yeah.
But that being said, I was in this like old office building with no windows. And I tell you what, working in a room with no windows is like, it starts to make you feel crazy pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I now am, we're in rural Virginia and driving everywhere takes a bit of time, but I've got some beautiful windows in my studio and that is feeling really good. But yeah, I mean, even sometimes when I'm feeling stuck, in my work, I find that changing up the environment or even going to just like, sketch in a different room or put yourself in a different environment can really kind of get things going.
I think so too. I think it's again, it kind of comes back to this like figuring out your style and like getting stuck there. It's I think the same as getting too used to a space or a way of working or like a setup. But I mean, you kind of have to make yourself uncomfortable to like get the creative juices flowing again.
Yes, could not agree more.
Well, how are you thinking about kind of visibility, exposure, getting the word out about what you're creating? Are you focusing on, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to get exposure for your work, but there's like the social media route. Are you doing more self-promotion? Are you going more galleries, shows? Kind of how are you thinking about this right now?
Yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place. I mean, I want to say all of the above, but I feel like like over the past year, really, I've been intentional about wanting to focus more on the marketing aspect of my work. There's so much more to it than just making the art. And so I've really been putting more time and energy into that, which has been exciting. I've got some gallery relationships that are kind of developing. And so, I feel like previously I thought of it more as kind of like a gallery representation or, self-promotion thing, whereas I'm finding that it can be both. And so I'm still, I'm also trying to ramp up my newsletter frequency and my social media posting and all those things. So I'm kind of coming at it from several different angles. And then I think over the next couple of months and this year, I'll start trying to pay attention to what's working the best and kind of see where it makes the most sense to be spending my time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to approach it and it's like almost experimental because I feel like one seems good and then maybe you go down the route and you're like, I'm spending so much time on marketing and I'm getting more exposure in galleries and it's less of this type of
Totally.
work. So I think it's good to always be open to kind of test the waters and then pull back on refine. That's my favorite word, like refine as you go. So
Yes, yes, for sure.
yeah, but what is I guess, are you enjoying a certain aspect of it the most right now? Are you like enjoying like, let's say writing for a newsletter compared to photography, compared to, is there anything that stands out that you particularly like or dislike?
Yeah, definitely the latter. There are lots of parts that I dislike. I don't mind like creating the social media posts as much as I mind how much time it takes me and how I kind of feel beholden to this algorithm. It bugs me. I do enjoy kind of writing my own content and like writing newsletters as well. So, I love it, but I always feel like it takes me too long. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. It's like the trade-off of, I feel like I talk to a lot of people in the same boat. It's like how much time, the amount of time I'm putting into this, at what end is it like, when is it worth it? When is it not?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like that. And me, that's where the role of galleries and shows comes into play. It's like they
Right.
do theoretically do a lot of that for you. And it's, how much time do you need in the studio? I'm similar. I find it enjoyable. Like it's just another creative space for me. But it does take so much time that I feel like all of a sudden that I'm so far removed from artwork. It's very hard for me to task switch between them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whole nother branch of your business.
Right.
And, time is just so precious to me right now because, being a mom of young kids, I feel like every waking moment I have in the studio, I need to be making the absolute most of it, which is probably a kind of unnecessary stress I put on myself. So I have to check myself and slow down and remind myself that the marketing stuff is part of it too. But I definitely start to feel anxious about like, I'm not creating enough art, Today I spent too much time on that Instagram post or whatever. But, it's a work in progress. It's like just a balancing act, I guess.
Well, I guess kind of going off that, I ask artists a lot, what does your schedule kind of look like? Do you have any rhythms, any kind of systems that help you stay on top of this balancing act? So you can either think about this from a daily standpoint or a weekly, and however your systems work, I'd love to know. I think artists are always looking for kind of like organization, time management advice from other people.
Oh man, totally. And I've spent a lot of time too, like listening to other artists talk about it and like, taking an online workshop about how to schedule your day effectively as an artist and all the things. I'm finding that right now in my life, it's pretty difficult for me to stick to a schedule that kind of, with the kids, it's just like everything is so unpredictable that I kind of have to be flexible in the sense that like, okay, I have a kid home sick today. I've got to take him to the doctor's appointment. So this afternoon when they're taking a nap, like what can I accomplish in like a 2 hour time frame that's not gonna make, I'm not gonna sit down and try to start a painting in that amount of time, but like I might be like, okay, I'm gonna take advantage of this being kind of like a forced admin day. And I do that when I'm traveling too. Like I can't be painting on the airplane, so I'll do computer work. I wish I could say I had more of a system in place. I think maybe down the road I'll have something that's a little bit more structured, but right now I just feel like I kind of have to be prepared to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it's seasonal too. I mean, I don't have children, so I know that's like a whole other element as well. But even for me, like month to month, certain times of the year are way more, I can like
Oh
be way
yeah.
more structured than
Oh
like
yeah.
right now going into the holiday season. I'm like, we're just doing what we can and things pop up and
Totally.
you're called different places. And so I always ask because I think it's nice to hear how other people are thinking about it, but I feel like there's no one right solution for artists on
Yeah.
this topic. And it's hard to kind of, I don't know, like batchwork creativity, which I feel like is what a lot of these kind of
Totally.
courses say. They're like, batchwork your day. And it's like, you can't really do that. Like, force yourself to paint when you're not
Yeah.
feeling it.
I mean, and it's like some days that works, some days I'm able to come. I find that if I'm like in the middle of a painting where I
Mhm.
know kind of where I'm going with it, I can sit down and like, at that point it's not like creative thinking as much as it's like now I'm applying the paint and to the canvas in a way that I thought about already. You know what I mean?
Right.
So a lot of that kind of thinking, honestly I find myself doing like when I'm driving or like I am famous for falling asleep at night and all of a sudden having to like get up and jot something down because a lot of ideas come to me when I'm falling asleep,
Hmm.
weirdly. But yeah, I think you just kind of have to get creative. At least for me, like you're saying, in this moment, I have to get creative about the ways that I'm using my time. And you just kind of learn to like, okay, here's a little cheat code I can use, like, while the kids are doing whatever. And then when you get a full day in the studio and you get to paint all day, it's like glorious. So
Makes you
yeah,
appreciate it more.
totally. Yeah. But yeah, you can't force it. And it's so, I don't know. I've been trying so much to work on acceptance versus resistance and just accepting where I am in this moment and what it looks like and all the ups and downs. That's
Yeah,
kind of where we are.
definitely. Well, I'd love to ask kind of what have been some of the major challenges in your business as an artist, as a business owner, what have like stumbling blocks been, things that you're still working through, maybe some things you figured out, but what comes to mind?
A lot of what we touched on earlier, I really feel like all of the business part of my business that's not the art making part is something I'm constantly trying to juggle and keep the balls in the air. I sort of feel like I need an assistant, like a studio manager, but I can't afford one yet. So,
Mhm.
like, that's just, maybe I'll get there with time. But right now, I try to spend like a day or two each month to like update inventory or do kind of like the bookkeeping behind the scenes stuff that keeps the wheels turning. But I struggle with keeping up with it all. I really struggle with being present enough on social media and not having that take too much time, like we talked about. And then the other thing is just like the unpredictability of my life right now, which is a temporary thing, but it's something that I've had to kind of adapt to. And it's constantly challenging. You try to be organized and you try to map out a schedule for yourself, and then you've got a snow day and the kids are home from school. And so
Right.
it's very difficult to not get frustrated when your whole day goes out the window. But I'm a mom and that's my other job and it's my kids always come first. And so I just have to do a lot of mental self-coaching
Yeah.
and kind of just checking in and reminding myself that this is where I am and like, it is what it is. Like today might be a little bit of a shit show and then tomorrow is going to be a new day. So it's just, I don't know, the scheduling, I guess, and structure and kind of organization of it all is tough for me right now.
And I think it's really hard because I've had this conversation with a few other people. It's like when you have a salaried full-time job, there's like more boundaries on it in some way, which I think
Yeah.
is, harder in some ways, but also working for yourself, it's like there's more to do, but like less structure around when it gets done. So when things derail, you almost have to like hold yourself to deadlines. I had a boss that was like, you need to do this by Friday.
And then all of a sudden, I'm like making myself crazy to meet some deadline. And I'm like, wait, this is all, I just made all of this up. Like, none of this is
Yes.
real. I don't have to be this stressed out. This is all like a creation of my own design. But yeah, the boundaries thing is tough. And working from home, my studio's at home again now. And that's tough too, because you're constantly like, there's a laundry basket full of clothes
Yeah.
glaring at you in the hallway. But so again, I'm still getting in my rhythm here, but I'm gonna try and kind of come in the studio and close the door. And like, I also find that it goes the other way too sometimes. After I get the kids down at night, I'll want to try and get a little bit more work done. And I find sometimes I found myself falling into a habit of like, I'm working every free moment I can find, and I'm not giving myself any time off.
Yeah.
So that's important too, to like, you gotta let your brain reset and you gotta step away from it and come back to it. That's like such an important part of the process. So, to be careful about like not Yeah, I just boundaries are very tricky for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, and like you said earlier, your best ideas come when you're kind of doing not work, like you're sleeping or
Yeah.
you're driving, or I mean, I'm the exact same way, and there's like a whole bunch of science on like why that happens that I don't
Yeah.
fully understand, but
Yeah.
I think it is really hard, and this is something I know a lot of artists struggle with, and like me in particular, is giving yourself time off when you know there's stuff that you like need to
Yes.
do and like having that balance of it. I had that kind of, I don't know, epiphany moment the other day that I'm like, why am I putting all this pressure on myself? Like
I
it's kind of
know.
like it's fake. Like I don't have to do this by
Yeah,
a certain time. It's my
exactly.
business. But then you can't go down like that rabbit hole too far because then all of a sudden you're doing nothing. But it's like
Yeah.
balancing, you know, you get to set your own structure with you need to work, but it's okay to have rest and you actually need to have rest. And then forgiving yourself for taking rest because I have that issue sometimes too, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just, it's noon and I just did nothing for an hour. And then it's like, that's okay. Like you needed to
Yeah.
step away
Like,
for a
not
second
only is it
because,
okay, it's like it's very important, and it's
yes,
like that also almost in a way counts as work because you need it in order to work, be productive and function. So I don't know. It's you can turn it over in your head a lot of different ways, but it's very tough to be your own boss and also be your own self-care advocate at the same time. It's like kind of two competing voices in your head. So
yeah. I mean, something I've been talking a lot with people about recently is white space and like how do we create more white space in our days? Because I think right now, I don't know, it's hard. I am in sort of like a coaching position in a lot of the work that I do. And it's like, I talk a lot about efficiency and how to do things better, but efficiency tends to mean we just pile more on our plate. And it's like, how do we get a space where we're efficient so we actually have white space and like time to do these other things? Like, how do we get to that mindset? Because I
my
think we're very
gosh.
much in a, or at least I am, I'm like, oh, I did this faster. Great. I can do something else.
Totally. And it's like, I feel like in the age of just all this crazy technology, it's like we're always doing something, whether it's on our phone, with our phone in our hands, or it's like foreign to us now to have a moment where we just sit and kind of be still. And I've gone in and out of phases of kind of trying to establish a meditation practice as part of my art practice. I'll try and come in at certain periods of time. I've tried to come in and do like, okay, I'm going to do 10 or 15 minutes of meditation every day, first thing when I get to the studio. And what's one of the hardest things about it for me is that I'm just sitting still and all I can think about is all the stuff I'm going to do today and need to do. And it's like that struggle is very, very real. So yeah, the white space.
It's very hard. I love that you're trying to do more of a meditation practice. I feel like I've tried and then not tried. And so I definitely don't have a practice, but I think I have gotten into journaling, which is somewhat helpful. But I think the main thing is trying to find ways to be bored again. Like I was,
Yeah.
you're a kid, you're bored, you go outside. Well, I don't know about kids these days, but when I
Yeah.
was a kid, you go outside, you're bored, your parents are like, just figure it out. And we would,
Yeah.
make up games and all this stuff. And it's like, well, how do I kind of facilitate that in like a studio environment or just in my
Right.
life? Like, how do I not immediately like turn on the TV, pick up a book even, or like pick up my phone? Like, how do I just kind of sit in my own thoughts?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
Exactly. It's wild where we are, where our brains are these days. I mean, that's a big reason that we moved back to Virginia is because we wanted to try and like slow things down for and have our like just the other day my husband and I, and not to get too off topic here, but the we let the kids out the door and they were just running around outside by themselves and we were like, oh my God, like this is the first time we've ever been able to do this. And they're just outside, like, going under a tree and making a fort and like that kind of stuff that is so valuable. It's hard to kind of put a label on what it is, but it's like, I don't know. We need it as adults too. And
yeah.
so I'm with you.
Well, it's very relevant. We moved like a few months ago and we moved to Beaufort, which is right outside Charleston for the same
Yep.
reason. Like our whole neighborhood, we don't have kids yet, but like other people's children like end up in our front yard. Like our neighbor's dog is like
Oh,
always on our porch. I'm like, I love being in a space where it's just like free reign, free
I
roam.
know. It's safe and yeah, it's just like go be in nature.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Exactly. So I'm trying to like take a piece of that myself
Yeah,
too. But
too.
kind of switching gears more, I guess, positive flip side, success side, what have been some really successful moments for you as an artist up to this point?
Yes, I am glad you asked this question because I I feel like it can easily start to sound like I'm complaining about my children too much, which I adore them both very much.
Mhm.
But there's, there. the balancing of being a mom and being an artist at the same time has also been incredibly rewarding. And my work informs my parenting, and my parenting informs my work, my experience as a mom and raising little humans. Like, it's just wild. And so whenever I can kind of feel like I'm successfully doing both of those things, like a pretty good job at both of those things, I feel like that's a win. And a couple years ago in Austin, I had a solo show at this architecture firm there, invited me to come and put on my own solo show during Austin studio tour, which was super fun. My daughter was 2 and I was pregnant with my son, like 8 months pregnant with my son. It was a crazy time, but I pulled off this show, and opening night, my daughter was there. I remember looking at the work with her, and then like I was very pregnant, like I mentioned, and then a couple weeks later, my son was born, and I just remember being like, I'm doing it all. Like I am creating humans and art, and I've kind of felt like a badass in that moment.
Yeah, as you should. And I think that's, I mean, total transparency, like so nice to hear as someone who wants to have a family but doesn't yet and like is in that transition of like
Totally.
what is that going to look like? Because I think it's obviously like I'm aware that it's going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of time, but I also think I've had so many women on this podcast that talk about how it like also seamlessly like makes it like works together and makes like the work better, the
Yeah.
parenting better. Like hearing that is so amazing. And then also just the thought of you being a parent that's doing this and like one of your daughter's first memories is going to be you
Yes.
doing a show. Like that's crazy. That's amazing.
I totally agree. I'm a big proponent of like the artist mother experience and talking about it and making it more visible, because there's like the old adage that like artists can't be mothers or whatever is such a bummer that that has been kind of a stigma for so long. But so I try and talk about it transparently, like on social media and stuff too, because I think it's so important for people to know, like, that artists very much can be mothers, and that the two worlds really are intertwined in a lot of ways. And also like the beauty of the flexibility of being an artist when you're a mom is huge. But it's an uphill battle. There are still so many opportunities I feel like I don't fully have access to at this moment because I'm a mom of young kids. So hopefully we see the art world continue to kind of catch up on that. But yeah, let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important. And again, most of my audience, I feel like, is in this phase, have young kids, have older kids, or thinking about kids. And so it's just, I speaking to like an 80% female audience, I just think it's such an important conversation to highlight the benefits of it and that it's possible and that it's great and that it's so wonderful. So I love that we're talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you see next for your business? What's on the horizon for 2026?
Oh, well, let's see. Again, I'm really trying to kind of hone in on marketing and really continue to develop some relationships that I have with galleries, and building more relationships with designers and kind of a variety of clients. Like I mentioned at the beginning, having all those different that variety of outlets I've found to be like, I try and keep it so that I always have something kind of substantial coming up on my calendar within like the next couple of weeks. So, I kind of try and just keep stacking things up as much as I can. And so I'm finding that with like the diversity in relationships, I'm able to I flew down to Austin for an install the other week, and now I'm having this conversation with you. And then I'll go and have a meeting with the gallery director next week. So I'm trying to just kind of keep pushing all of those relationships, because I just really have found that the more plugged in you are to the community, like the universe gives you back what you put into it. And I feel like I've established a nice momentum. So I'm just really trying to keep that going and see how much more I can continue to grow with the focus on marketing and networking and all of those things that are really telling the story of my work in addition to making it.
Yeah, and it's hard because that stuff takes time, but I mean, I do think, especially like community networking aspect, it's like you never know what conversation is going to lead to like some callback later, and that's something I'm big like doing a lot of right now is just reaching back out to people like you, people that I've crossed paths with, whether it be on the podcast or in life or wherever. And like I think just staying connected with people, not for any other reason than just, I'll throw your name out there. Like we'll have good conversations about what it's like to do this stuff. It's like you never know what that stuff leads to. And I think that's, you know, easy. more enjoyable too than like marketing on social media, but
Yes.
you never know what it'll what it'll lead to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it can be hard to, like, I volunteered to do this thing at this event or whatever it may be. And you're like, well, are you getting paid? Are you getting exposure? Like, maybe no, not yes, sometimes.
Yeah.
But so it can be easy to feel like, am I wasting my time? Should I be doing something more productive? But to your point, you never know how that stuff comes back around in the future. And so I try to, force myself to like, and sometimes it's kind of getting out of your comfort zone and forcing yourself to go to a gallery opening by yourself and it's awkward but like you end up chatting with somebody and you never know what comes later down the road. So, yeah, I'm with you. A lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's great. Well, this has been wonderful. I love to conclude every episode with a tip or a lesson or something that's really benefited you in your practice, your business that you could share with the audience. Does anything initially come to mind?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many things. I have this little sticky note hanging on my wall in my studio, and it's a quote that I heard. I don't know who I heard it from originally, but I've heard people say it in different words several times now. But it's just the idea that feeling discomfort in your practice is a sign that you're headed in the right direction because, that means that you're growing and you're pushing yourself into new spaces. And a lot of times, it can be easy to kind of recoil from that, but I think if you can push yourself to be curious about it and not let that, there's days when you get so down, like at least I do mentally when I'm not happy with where my work is going, but like that's part of it, and if I can push through that and if I can kind of like investigate it a little bit, I find that it can be really fruitful. So that's just one little tip that I try and remind myself of often.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, thank you for sharing that. Can you share how the audience can learn more about you, the different ways they can find you and your work?
Yes, I am on Instagram at AHB_studio. And then my website is just www.ashleyblazer.com. You can buy work directly from my website. So sign up for my newsletter and I'd love to connect.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much. This was great.